The moon in Chinese poetry. As presented in Chinese literature, the moon is particularly beautiful insofar as how unique it is. On the one hand, it acts as a fixed point in the sky, but also in people's lives. You can consider that philosophers like Confucius, to writers like Li Bai, and even our own selves have looked up at the very same moon. This is a rather prolific fact and something to consider throughout this presentation. On the other hand, as she waxes and wanes, the moon presents herself slightly differently each night. Sometimes she appears as a sliver in the sky, but at other times she is seen in all her beauty and grandeur in the full moon. Considering these qualities that make the moon highly unique, I will posit the following about the moon as it is presented in Chinese literature, and what we can learn from such literature. The first being the moon's place as an element that is indifferent to time and space. The moon presents itself equally to all. This means that both in our joy, but also in our sufferings, we can be confident in knowing that the moon will be there for us, and also for those that we are thinking about. The second being how the moon reflects the human experience. As it is ever-changing, the moon functions as a facsimile for the life of man and how life presents itself in a multitude of ways. These ideas can first be seen in Du Fu's The Moonlit Night. Du Fu writes, "The moon that watches over Fuzhou tonight will be gazed alone by you in your chamber. I miss my little children from far away, who have yet to understand why you yearn for Chang'an. Fragrant fog dampens the coils of your hair. Cool moonlit night chills your jade-white arms. Oh, how I long for us to lean together by the window, and let our tears be dried away by the moonlight." For context, Du Fu is writing this poem to his wife during the Anlushan Rebellion, a civil war in the 8th century during the Tang Dynasty in China. This was a time of great distress, especially for someone like Du Fu, who was working in the government at the time. Despite the great calamities he faced, we can see that Du Fu is able to find some solace in the moon. He starts by saying, "The moon that watches over Fuzhou tonight will be gazed alone by you in your chamber," showing that despite geographically the couple being separate, they are able to connect by looking at the moon in some way. Now, Du Fu's understanding of the beauty of the moon is further seen when saying, "Oh, how I long for us to lean together by the window, and let our tears be dried away by the moonlight," showing that even once the couple is reunited, they will continue to gaze in awe of the moon's great beauty. Moving on, a more discreet understanding of the moon may be seen in the Chinese language itself. Chinese idioms are typically of 4 characters and can and have played an important role in culture and in literature. This specific one, Fei Huang Li He, can be roughly translated to something like sad, happy, separated, and together. Interestingly enough, we could look towards the moon in its various phases and potentially ascribe an emotion to each phase, where the first moon or the new moon, when you can hardly see anything, sometimes a sliver, but maybe even nothing, may show some sort of feelings of sadness, or it could also be interpreted as some feeling of separation with another, whereas the waxing crescent could be that feeling sort of dissipating and you moving either towards a state of joy, happiness, or moving closer to a loved one. The same can be said for the first quarter, and then all the way until you get to the full moon. Continuing to our second poem is A Prelude to Water Melody by Su Shi. Men have sorrow and joy, they part or meet again. The moon's bright or dim, and she may wax or wane. There has been nothing perfect since the olden days, so let us wish that man may live as long as he can. Though miles apart, we'll share the beauty she displays. Now for some pictures on the moon. On the left we have a man and what is likely his servant standing under the moon. You can tell that it is probably the man's servant by noticing that he is standing up, but also that he is much smaller than the man sitting down, something very typically done in Chinese art and prints to show that someone was below another. This seemingly small detail is actually important as it suggests something about how the Chinese understood the moon. That is, the moon is indifferent to time, space, and its subjects. No matter who you are and where you are, you may enjoy the moon's great beauty. And on the right we have Li Bai, who's very famous for his great love of the moon, but also his affection for wine, and in particularly large quantities, I might add. This picture of him under the boat goes along with a certain myth people have attached to him. That is, after getting so drunk, he tried to actually embrace the moon, but of course ended up falling into the river and then drowned. We might consider that this is him taking a quick nap moments before the fatal mistake. However, I would like to offer an alternative view that shares parts of this myth. I believe the artist could be trying to show how he was so comfortable around the moon, and thus sharing in some of the certain maternal qualities within the moon. To that extent, you can see a great reverence for the moon within Chinese poetry, but also potentially feelings of safety and warmth, hence the juxtaposition of these two pictures. In our third and final poem, we look at a piece by Zhang Ruxiu of the Tang Dynasty. The piece is titled Spring River in the Flower Moonlight. Zhang writes, "Who was the first to see the moon by the river? When did the moon above the river first shine upon us? Generations of people come and go, never ending, yet the moon shines brightly each year, like it always has." In the first stanza, Zhang offers another unique quality of the moon. Some of the other natural elements that are written about in Chinese literature include chrysanthemums or maybe even a body of water, each being something that you can see up close and even interact with. However, the same cannot be said for the moon. I might even mention what is supposed to happen to Li Bai when he tried to touch the moon. To this extent, Zhang seems to be commenting on a sort of mystique that the moon holds. In accordance with the human pursuit of knowledge and truth, it is possible that this mysterious nature of the moon and its distance from us has moved people towards it even further. We can also see common themes being reinforced in the second paragraph. The moon's indifference to time is noted by Zhang, and this speaks to an idea that writers from different eras have noticed and further built upon. Hopefully the moon's role in Chinese literature is rather apparent. So now I would like to take a moment and fast forward to today and see how the moon has kept up with the times and how it still has a very important role in Chinese culture and everyday life. In doing so, we will look at 2 Chinese festivals and also some more Chinese idioms. The first would be the Chinese New Year. 16-day festival, which is based on a lunar calendar, once again showing how important the moon is and even serving a functional purpose today. On the 16th day, people will actually light these beautiful lanterns as seen in the left and bottom right pictures. Traditionally, these might have taken on a more religious role, sending something up to relatives, but today people might do it more just out of tradition. And as you can see, it is very beautiful. And this will of course take place on a full moon. Also, in the top right, we have the Lady Chang'e, who is part of a Chinese myth where she now is believed to have lived on the moon. So maybe, just maybe, on the 16th day during the full moon, if you look closely enough, you'll see the beautiful Lady Chang'e. Now moving on to idioms or chengyu. As we talked about earlier, these can have an important role in culture and can be seen throughout literature. Now, despite being only 4 characters, they generally pack a lot of meaning. The first one we will look at is 花好月圆. Now, this one can briefly be translated to good or full flowers and full moon, essentially saying that when the moon is full, other things follow, such as full or beautiful, pretty flowers. That is, you may be in prosperous times financially, or you might have the right harvest, or you might be with loved ones. The next one is 八九文月. This can be roughly translated to raise your glass to the moon. And I believe this one speaks to what I talked about on Li Bai earlier, and this sort of maternal feeling, or the sort of comfort and warmth that people see in the moon. That is, we have seen the reverence that people have ascribed to the moon, but this sort of shows how comfortable people can be in sort of raising a glass and having a drink with the moon. The next festival would be 中秋节, or the Mid-Autumn Festival. This also takes place during a full moon, showing the importance of a full moon in Chinese culture and what the full moon represents. And here is a lovely picture on the right-hand side of a full moon in Nanjing. Also on the left, in the bottom left, we have a picture of a mooncake, or yuebing. This mooncake also has the idiom printed on it in the middle, as you can see that we just talked about, 花好月圆. Once again showing signs of prosperity that come with the full moon. And we also see some of the same moon lanterns, and this would be a time that people will come together and enjoy family and just be with one another. This marks the end of my presentation. I thought it would only be appropriate to share a picture I took myself of course, the moon. Some of you may even recognize where this picture was taken. But the point being, this picture shows the same exact moon that Du Fu, Zhang Ruxu, Su Shi, and Li Bai wrote about. I found this to be a very beautiful idea, and I hope that you all are able to share in that. I would like to thank you for listening to my presentation, and, just as I will, remember to think of someone that you love as the moon casts over you tonight.